I'd like to call the meeting to order of our regular council meeting, May 16th, 2022. Will you call the roll, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Here.
Mr. Hempel?
Here.
Mr. Donnelly?
Here.
Mr. Dale?
Here.
Okay, could we all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to go ahead and do public comments at this time. Dan, do we have public comments?
We do have one person signed up. That's Denise Bixby, and she is here.
Good morning. Or good evening, I guess.
It's evening. Gosh, something went really wrong today if it's not. All right, hey, my name is Denise Bixby, and I work at Genesis Schools. And I'm just here to thank you, the council, for giving us a season pass for the water park for our recent fundraiser. We really appreciate it. I've got a note here somewhere that you guys can look at if you need to. But anyway, I'm just here to thank you for that. We do appreciate that. And just as a Tonganoxie resident, thank you for painting things. It looks really good at the pool.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you,
ma'am. We appreciate you coming up. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes? Chair, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Okay, we got a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Under the consent agenda, I'm going to move a couple things around, but I'd like approval of the consent agenda and paying the bills. Has everybody had a chance, all the council members have a chance to look them over? Chair entertains a motion.
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, we got a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Do we have anything under old business? Nothing under old business. Okay. I'm going to move down to consider request for 2022 funding support for the Farmers Market Organization. And Dan, do you have that?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, I can kick us off.
Okay, kick us off. We'll go from there.
Thank you. Our typical procedure for considering funding requests from community groups is that about this time each year, the city fields requests from groups that in the community that request funding from the city, and we've got a process to evaluate those, a criteria and framework structure that's been recently updated, and then decisions are made with the budget approval for the upcoming budget year. That doesn't obviously come as automatic knowledge to groups in the community, and so what we've got to present tonight is a request for funding that we fielded from the Tonganoxie Farmers Market Group, and it's their second year, started I believe last Thursday with operations, and as a local group, they've submitted a request for the city to consider for this year a funding amount of $5,000 and an itemized list of potential projects or initiatives to use that money for. We've presented it to you because it is their first submittal for funds. They weren't included last summer in the organizations that submitted. And the city council does have the discretion mid-year like this to consider an amendment to the budget if that were to be necessary, or the allocation of previously unbudgeted funds for expense that would come from fund balance levels. The subject of the request includes a multi-page letter that addresses the need and again the proposed uses of funding. I of course want to introduce Natalie Fries, who's here tonight, and I'm sure she'd be happy to answer any questions you have or make a short comment if you'd appreciate that. But staff presented it with an agenda statement to sort of give framework in that sense, and I'm happy to take any questions the council might have.
Natalie, would you like to come up and tell us a little bit about the farmer market, please?
Sure. As Dan mentioned, this is our second season, and we started off last Thursday with a big bang. We estimated about 275 people on our opening Thursday farmers market. So we're doing a lot of good things, and we have more vendors this year as well. And any amount that you guys see fit would help us get the ball rolling. We got seed money from Bill New last year. That's how we got started. And all of the people that have put in the countless hours has all been voluntary at this point. So if you guys have any questions, I can help you.
Council members, do you have any questions?
Natalie, I appreciate you putting together the budget and all. That's pretty clear, and it's really what helps us make those decisions. On the bands thing in particular, does that compete with any of our other programs or?
No, in fact, I think we'll partner with Lulu and a couple of the musicians within town and really come up with some local talent. And actually, the music teachers and band instructors through the high school and through the middle school as well, and really partner to think about how we can utilize the musicians within our community. And then, yeah, at this point, we don't have any money to give them. And so having this extra grant money would come in handy, and I think build more of our entertainment and musician funding.
Okay,
Do vendors pay for a
They do.
spot?
They do. Approximately $140 for an entire season to rent a stall.
So it really doesn't generate a whole lot to
It
do a whole lot of
doesn't.
things, but
We
it
want to
helps.
make it, I mean, we're in it just as much for the farmers and the vendors as much as we are for the community of Tonganoxie, and so we want to make it a reasonable financial request.
okay. Council members have any more questions?
The project planning, a lot of the budget items, I mean, things like the pop-up canopy and seats, that's something that isn't new every year. The website design, that's something that wouldn't be necessarily every year. Have you guys talked about future requests as well? This is kind of the first go.
Yep, this is the first
What do you
go.
anticipate subsequent years as?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have an answer for you. I just knew that potentially these funds would be available to really continue the ball in motion. But I would anticipate that we wouldn't ask for as much in future years.
So just a technical thing, would the funds go to the Friends of the Tonganoxie Public Library? Is that how it would go, or is there actually
No, there
a
isn't.
organization actually set up as the Tonganoxie Farmers Market, Inc., or?
Yes, we are Tonganoxie Farmers Market in partnership with Friends of the Library. You're absolutely right. We
Because
kind of
the
feel-
501(c) is under the Tonganoxie Public Library, Friends of Public,
Correct.
okay. Okay, and that's what I want to make sure, I'd hate to send you a tax statement at the end of the year.
Right.
How would we budget this item? How would,
That's a good question. So in our general fund budget, we have a couple different sources of funds for options. It is a general support request, so no other funding source would either be legally appropriate or traditionally appropriate with our practices. The city, when we approved the 2022 budget, included about $44,000 in excess fund balance capacity that was planned for unforeseen needs. We've since spent $5,000 above what we anticipated for the Arts Council and the Historical Society allocation of funds, so that drew that down. And then the other unexpected budget item was the tree removal approved at the most recent council meeting, which was a little more than 14,000. So we do still maintain that reserve. It's obviously about a quarter of the way through, or I'm sorry, a third of the way through the fiscal year. So other unexpected needs could come up, but right now that's what we've identified as the most logical source of funds should the council approve this.
And it's my understanding next year, or for this budget that we're doing now, we're gonna take and put a notice in the Tonganoxie website, city website, concerning the fact that we need the budget request in by such and such a date.
Certainly, yeah. We'll immediately, this week, hopefully, get a notice out to anyone who's ever requested funds in the past, obviously now including the farmers market group and that.
Sure.
And request that they get those to us by hopefully the end of May or early June so they can be all included for consideration at the same time for next year's
We've got an
budget.
awful lot of people doing a lot of labor and time and effort for free, and that's really important for a small community. I think the only thing we ought to be thinking about is what if there's 25 more people come in? Not that they will, I don't know if they will or not, no idea.
Yeah.
But we used to have one, then there's two, then there's three, then there's, where do we, is there a limit? That's a policy decision, it's not a farmer's market or the business group. It's just overall, we've got to have some target out there of what we're aiming at. Or, I could sure see another 20 people come in and we just don't, how do we pick and choose? And I know we have a little policy in there and you have it written out, it looks really good. But I think it's some type of limit. So anyways, I'm sorry.
Okay.
for
And I
taking
think
too
bring
much.
that, putting a notice out for this budget year will help, because what it'll do is, that's what we're gonna fund off of for the following year. So I think that'll be a big help, so,
Certainly.
okay? Council members, any more comments? Chair entertains a motion, or I'll make one.
Well, I guess you can, but
Yeah, I can on this one, so,
I would make a motion.
Okay,
to
go
approve
ahead.
the funding.
go ahead.
I would make that motion, that we approve the funding.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor, we approve the funding, which should include the dollar amount,
Oh, sorry, 5,000.
$5,000. Okay, we got a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
Got a second. Lindsay, call the roll, please.
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Himpel?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Natalie, thanks for all your work
Thank
on
you.
that.
Thank
I
you.
know
Thank you.
it's
Hope to see you
taken a
guys
ton of
every
time.
Thursday night.
Good luck.
Okay, under new business, I'm going back up to A, Resolution 05-22-01, approving authorizing the execution of the third amendment to the real estate contract on sale between City of Tonganoxie and Unilock Chicago, Inc. George, do you have that one?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem,
City
thank
Manager?
you. Yep. So this item, most of you are very familiar with the Unilock project. It was the first tenant in the business park. In fact, they committed to the Tonganoxie Business Park before we moved any dirt out there to get the improvements that are there in place. And so, kind of giving you the quick timeline, in March of 2018, the city and Unilock agreed to a development agreement. They closed on Lot 1 of the business park, which is a little over 30 acres, in May of 2018. And then within that development agreement, there were certain provisions about how they would phase in development on their property. So the first phase was a sales office and an outdoor sales yard that they would use for distribution into the Kansas City and what they consider Western region market. And so that first phase was completed as committed to in the development agreement. The second phase on the remaining acreage, or on the remaining 17 acres, there was a few options with an ability to mutually agree upon extensions in terms of certain performance criteria that were contemplated in the development agreement, and more specifically, that they would build a manufacturing plant. And so those options were executed in July of 2020. That gave them an 18-month extension until May of 2022, and so or May 31st, the end of this month. And so what they've presented to us is that original development agreement contemplated some options in case they weren't ready to move forward at the end of this extension period. And they presented some business principles that they're functioning under and made a request to consider a third option to grant them an 18-month extension. So after discussions with them and consideration of their business practices and the business model and the commitments they've made to the site, in exchange for a $5,000 non-refundable deposit, staff is recommending giving this project an additional 18-month extension, which would take it to November 2023 to begin the development and construction of the manufacturing plant. Be happy to answer any other questions should you have them.
Council members, any questions?
Any, George, thoughts on just following up with them periodically to prod them to maybe go a little bit quicker?
Yes, and so we had that frank discussion, and I think, you know, they've got a couple of other capital projects that just from a funding standpoint, as soon as one project finishes, they're pretty confident that they'll begin before November 2023, but they would like the assurance that our agreement gives them that extension.
Very good, thank you.
Okay. Council members, any more comments? Chair will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 05-22-01 approving and authorizing the execution of the third amendment to the real estate contract of sale between the City of Tonganoxie and Unilock Chicago, Inc.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second. Lindy, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Himpel?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, item number C, consider water pass family season pass eligibility.
Thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. So this is a little bit of a FYI, unless you want to have a discussion on it. So as far as the water park goes, we have an application form that allows you to apply for season passes in 4 different membership levels. The first is child, then adult, then senior, and then family. And specifically under the family, it allows you to put up to 5 family members. And what I want to read real quickly is the broad definition of family that exists on the application itself. And so essentially it says all children named, comma, natural and adopted, comma, are of proper age, comma, on my health insurance plan, comma, under my legal guardianship and as a member of my household. So I think it's a pretty lengthy, expanded definition of family. The issue we're seeing is we've received a handful or less of applications that are trying to define family beyond that, and our staff is doing absolutely what they should. They are going by the definition that's listed on the application. Some examples are nieces and nephews, grandmas and grandpas, and so I guess I'm informing you that my direction to staff has been to hold the line based on the family definition that's offered. But I just wanted to bring it to your attention that at least a couple or a handful of folks are upset about that because they would like that definition to be expanded to what they believe it should be. So, like I said, it's a FYI of what we're doing from a policy standpoint, but I would certainly, we are not the policymaker, so if somebody has a strong inkling to make a change, We did confirm with our pool manager about what the practice is at admissions and how we ask for identification related to family memberships. And I feel like we have a good system in place and competent people to verify what is accurate information and what isn't. So, I think, though, if there's a contemplated change, we should probably talk about what we're going to do for next year, because we're already midstream and we've had other folks pay for season passes under the rule structure as it is.
Well, I think, for me, I think the intent was that it was a household family, right? And bringing in other people, other members of the family that live in different households is a far different thing.
Right.
That being said, I'd also, in this day and age, you can't be too protected. So I don't know if there's anything in our definition or anything in that policy that anybody could poke holes at from a discrimination standpoint or anything like that.
I'm actually not prepared to speak to that tonight, but I can look into it and follow up with you. That being said, I think you can still, if you want to be completely neutral and leave out even defining it, you could just limit it to 5 people within the same household. That's a broad way of addressing it, but I could have an answer for you by next time if that's convenient.
The only question I have there would be trying to vet that. And, obviously people are gonna try and get away with whatever they can. And so, I guess even still, now they can still say, oh yeah, he's all those things.
Yeah, and I think trying to go back to when this application and this language was developed, I would agree with you. I think the intent was clearly that it's dependents within a household, and they didn't say mom, dad, and kids. But whether it's a natural or adopted child, are you the legal guardian? Are they in your household? Do you carry health insurance on them?
Yeah.
I think they try to spell it out as much as they could.
And yet-
because I would anticipate this is not the first year we've had a handful of people that wanted to challenge the definition.
And yet we don't go the next step of getting documentation to confirm everything that they've said on the application, right? We're not getting proof of that insurance coverage. We're not getting,
Well, there is a bit of an honor system, but, if someone put children on their application that are their nieces and nephews, but misidentified them as their own children,
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a small community, folks know each other. And like I said, for the most part, it's an honor system. And, to take it back a step further, it's a community amenity. It's funded through sales tax. So this isn't like a Oceans of Fun where it's a for-profit business. And at the same time, we're trying to offer competitive wages to our kids so that the community that can stay here and work here during the summer. We just went, from $7.50 an hour to $10 an hour for lifeguards, and nearly $15 an hour for our assistant pool manager positions. And so it's not even a break-even venture for us. But there is a little bit of, I think honor system embedded in this. And then even the rates, it's $150 for a family season pass for a resident, in which we expanded the definition of resident when we went through our fees earlier this year to say anybody in the school district. So I think from the city manager's perspective, we've kept it reasonable and expanded the definition as much as we can. And I just think there's folks that would like other consideration that at this time I could not support from a staff level.
I would concur, George. There's no end to it. How do you put parameters around it? And we're not gonna spend $1 gazillion policing and identifying and fingerprinting and.
Yeah.
I think what we have, and Jake, I think that's a good idea. If you just take a look at it, make sure we're doing the right thing.
Will do.
We don't want to hurt people. Our taxpayers are paying for it, but it is a fee-based program and you gotta have some rules, or just don't have a fee. And I don't know that that's the right thing to do either.
Any more questions? Okay. All right, city manager's report.
Thanks, thanks again, Mayor Pro Tem. We've just got a couple of items. The first one, Mr. Porter is going to go through the April financials. Just wanted to share with you that we did submit last month the required ARPA reporting. I know the state put out a list of cities that weren't compliant with that requirement, but we wanted to verify that we were in fact able to submit. And again, the funding or the spending we did with our ARPA funds thus far was simply to pay premium paid to those employees that incurred hours during that first initial COVID response. With that, Mr. Porter.
Thanks, George. The financial report is included on the online packet as well as at the dais for the council's attention. The executive summary highlights I'll point out are that we're a third of the way through our fiscal year as of the end of April. To date, we've collected 41% of our total revenue estimates across all funds and spent 25% of our expenditure budget authority in all funds with budget set by the state. The city does maintain a minimal amount of the proceeds of 2021A and 2022B debt service issuances from earlier this spring, and we'll use those proceeds to meet the remaining costs of issuances. We receive a few periodic invoices through the remainder of the year for some of the reporting requirements for those. We do also maintain the entirety of the debt proceeds for 2022C temp notes, which are going to be used to finance the capital construction of the water tower project currently underway and awarded, but not yet incurring invoices based on timing of that effort. We do anticipate that to commence soon, though, and we'll provide periodic updates as that project proceeds. The next debt service obligations are due in July, and we'll have the majority of the remaining debt service obligations in September of this year. And that would wrap up our year of debt service obligations. We did also in April receive the March 20th ad valorem property tax check from the county treasurer and remit the library their share. It's a very relatively minor portion of the annual property tax collections, just over $61,000 between the city and the library's share. The next largest distribution we expect about a month from now, which they titled the May 31st distribution at the county. Fuel excise tax and construction excise fees are things we've highlighted in prior reports. We're actually up 6.6% compared to last year in fuel excise tax, which is a pretty significant change compared to being down a little less than 4% compared to last year only a month ago. Some of that's related to the timing of our distributions from the state, but it is a correction that we appreciated seeing, and that it's a revenue we use to finance street maintenance activities in part. And it's a state collected revenue that we do receive periodically through the year. The city's moderate income housing grant distribution, number 2 of 4 total distributions, was processed in April. That's $100,000 even. And so of the total grant funds, the developer in that project has now received half of it, or $200,000 to date, for cost reimbursement for eligible project costs. The American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA funds, are also an item that George highlighted in his introduction earlier, so I won't belabor that, but a copy of our report was provided as an attachment at the end of this financial report. Moving ahead into budget amendments, we have approved one budget amendment thus far in 2022 for the police equipment reserve to accommodate a grant to fund about half of the cost of Motorola radio upgrades. Those radios have just, as of last week, been delivered and are starting to be integrated into our staff use. So we're excited to see that across the finish line this year, only a few months after the award of the grant and the council's authorization of the purchase. We look ahead, though, at the rest of the year, and as we monitor expenditure authority level, we see 4 funds that could project to have a budget amendment consideration later this year. The Special Highway Fund, in part because of the carryover of street maintenance dollars from the slurry seal project that was in part delayed until it could be redone this year. as well as potential cost returns on our bid that's currently out on the market, and we anticipate next council meeting providing results of that bid. The due date is June 1st, and we have had good communication with a couple contractors, including a few we don't usually work with, about that curb replacement project, and we hope to get some good competitive bids back in that case. Based on the outcome of that, again, we'll assess whether a budget amendment could be potentially necessary to complete the full scope of work or some elements of it. The water and sewer capital and operation funds, there are a couple projects such as the water tower, potential sewer engineering, preliminary wastewater treatment plant costs, and also various impacts of the soon-to-come addition of demand from our newest business park customer, the Hills Pet Nutrition Project. And so as we near the end of this fiscal year, we'll be keeping the council updated as to whether we need to make any mid-year budget adjustments in those funds as well. The general fund, I want to also make a note that in legal expenditure authority, we are sitting at a good position, and I'll highlight that in a future page of the report. But should the city incur additional unforeseen costs through the rest of the year, we will be, we've noted in earlier tonight, we approved a motion for some unexpected or previously unallocated use of fund balance in that fund. And so we'll look more closely at it as we go through the fiscal year as to whether a budget amendment may be needed or not. But right now, we don't have one for consideration because it wouldn't be required. Any questions on the overview? All right. I'm not going to focus on page 2 and page 3 of the report, except to just point out that for the city's major funds, they illustrate current, prior year to date, current year to date, and current year budget levels for revenues and expenditures in those funds. And as you'll see, we are well within budget authority margin, especially on the expenditure side, which is the most critical from a legal perspective. Page 3 of the report includes utility and non-utility capital funds, which again show the same information for revenues and expenditures. Page 4 of the report illustrates sales tax performance year to date. We've been monitoring that through several recent financial reports. We did add one definition type breakout to the sales tax report for the city's current 9.25% total sales tax rate. The state collects 6%, the county collects 1%, of which we receive a share, and then the city collects an additional 1.75% that's divvied up between the city general fund at 1% and 0.75% for the infrastructure sales tax. And that information then on the current year-to-date and prior 2 years, year-to-date trends is illustrated in the graphs on page 4 and page 5 of the report. Again, we're still proceeding ahead of last year's collections, and so that's something as we forecast for the 2023 budget year, we will be identifying what level of increase to project just based on the trends we've seen relative to budget and also relative to the prior year, each of the last 3 years. So really good news on that major revenue that provides a lot of the ability for us to do capital projects as well as fund general services from the general fund.
Dan, if I
Yes.
could stop you a second there.
Yes.
The state recently, governor just passed the bill to eliminate the food tax on the state side of it. As I understand that bill
Yep.
said cities can't eliminate the tax on food, their own tax. Is that correct? So
That
we
is-
should have no impact on those numbers at all.
That is exactly correct. That bill has a provision that did not allow cities and counties to reduce in a similar fashion local sales taxes. So right now, that is what we anticipate and will continue to budget. And a lot of the reasoning, I think, that you heard in discussions about that was the potential impact to small communities, some even much smaller than us, that rely entirely upon a gas station and a grocery store to fund critical police and fire and other services with that. Yep. That is something we closely monitored through that progression as it went on because it would have a huge impact. Moving to page 5 page 6 of the report, a couple expenditure highlights. I mentioned the general fund earlier, and the first breakout is general fund expenditures by category. So personal services, consider that salary and benefits. Contractual services, contracted services of professionals and other agents, not the city. Commodities, fuel, equipment, minor equipment, supplies, things that we use up. And capital outlay, more major things such as technology, components, vehicles, things of that nature. And again, you'll see that year-to-date expenditures in the first column, percent of annual budget, planned expenditures, and then in the final column, percent of the annual budget legal authority for overall expenditures. So the numbers I want to highlight are, we're a third of the way through the fiscal year. Typically, the general fund expense follows a pretty linear level of spending. So we want to be at this point less than 33% of annual budget expenditures to believe that we don't need to consider a budget amendment or some other adjustment to our spending practices. In the third column, we're at 29% of annual budget planned expenditures, and we're at only 23.5% of our legal authority for expenditures. So those are both comfortably under 33%, and that's positive. It reflects, judicious meeting of our budgetary limits by our department heads and anyone who purchases items with the city's budget authority. And so that's something that we'll hope to keep providing updates on as we go through the fiscal year. But at this point in the year, it's very good performance in the city's largest operating fund. The second chart on that page illustrates major commodities. As we look ahead and forecast for future budget years, we are concerned, obviously, in this current climate of inflation on many commodities. Groceries are one item that people have noted in discourse, but some of the ones that impact the city most heavily are fuel pricing for our city vehicles, diesel and gas, electricity to fund or to operate our city buildings, as well as our city wastewater treatment plant, which is a big user of electricity, and gas and propane, which again are used at the city's water and sewer plants, as well as other city facilities. What this chart illustrates are a 3-year running total of year-to-date expenses through April. And so you can see that fuel and oil are the item that has the greatest change percentage as a percentage basis from last year. So gas and diesel expenses rose from just over $16,800 last year through April to over $21,000 this year. That obviously reflects the impact of cost increases we've seen in that commodity both last year and this year relative to the prior year. So when we look ahead at the budget, one thing we do that's important is we build in some cushion. So if fuel prices rise, we're not going to be well over budget in that line item. But as you can see, we're at 37% of annual planned expenditures. So we are at this point in the year showing that we'll possibly exceed that line item's individual budget allocation. Interestingly enough, electricity and natural gas and propane are a slight decrease from last year. Some of that could be tied to the surge we saw in pricing in some sense from the sort of out of the ordinary February weather blip that hit in 2021. But a lot of that pricing is spread out over multiple billing cycles for certain utilities, multiple years. So it's interesting, but it doesn't, in an absolute number, outweigh the increase we've seen in gas and diesel. But wanted to provide this information so you're aware, and as we look ahead at 2023's budget, we'll obviously forecast what we can in terms of trends in those commodity costs. Any questions on that information? Okay. The last 2 pages of the standard portion of the report are an examination of our budget initiatives this year in 2022 with check marks for the items that have been completed or allocated by the City Council. The general fund, the last bullet point, illustrates 2 funding beyond previous allocation amounts for the general fund that I mentioned earlier when discussing the farmers market. We'll obviously add the farmers market to that item for the amount of $5,000 and reflect the remaining funding available in the general fund that was previously unbudgeted. We also have items like the water tower project not checked because we haven't obviously completed those obligations yet, but we are obviously underway on many of the projects that are not yet checked on this list. The next page of the report illustrates the 2023 budget development. Earlier this evening, we held the CMIP work session, and again, looking ahead at June and July, anticipate similar work sessions to identify things like department budget requests, community budget requests, and base budget preparation, as well as the impact of mill levy determination discussions and revenue requirements. Fund summary shows on the next page of the report a fund expenditures compared to budget authority for each of the city's budgeted funds. And then finally, the fund balance report shows funds on hand in funds as of the end of April. Happy to answer any questions the council might have, but appreciate your attention tonight.
Thank you. Council members have any questions?
Just one on our water tower. I can't remember the contract right off the top. Do they have any escalator clauses in there for cost of steel, or do you remember off the top of your head? I don't remember any.
I don't believe so. I think it was a guaranteed price contract.
I thought it was too.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make sure I remembered that correctly. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any more questions?
Good job, Dan.
Excellent job.
Thank you.
Under D, number 2, update on library board officers' elections.
Yes, thanks, Mayor Pro Tem. So in your packet is kind of the schedule of appointees and library board members. But this week, or last week, Megan Vestal had sent over an email stating that they had elected new officers. And Mr. Porter, I don't know if you have, I was looking for that email and I can't find it, but I don't know if you remember the 4 officers or if you have the email yourself.
Sure, I can reference it. So the new president is Megan Vestal. The new vice president is Jennifer Cole. And the secretary and treasurer positions remain the same with Brittany McWilliams and Dana Splikel, respectively.
Thank you for that report. Is there anything more under city managers or assistant city managers?
No, sir.
Okay. City attorney agenda. Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem agenda, I do not have any items. City council agenda. Okay, under mayor's agenda, executive session pursuant to attorney-client consultation exception.
You know what? I can handle that.
Good.
I move that the city council recess into executive session to discuss a petition filed against the city pursuant to the attorney-client consultation exception in KSA 754319B2. Executive session will include the city attorney, special counsel, city manager, and assistant city manager. The open meeting will resume in the city council chamber in 10 minutes?
10 minutes.
10 minutes?
Mr. Donnelly, can you amend that to remove special counsel?
I would make that amendment to my
Thank you.
motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
I'll second.
We have a second. Roll call vote, please.
Ms. McCutcheon?
Yes.
Mr. Hempel?
Yes.
Mr. Donnelly?
Yes.
Mr. Dale?
Yes.
Okay.
The record that no binding action was taken in executive session?
Okay. Any more motions or any more comments from city council members? Chair will entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we adjourned.
We got a motion. We got a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.